That's it? YouTube's loading, okay.
Should I wait for the recording to start? I see it's going live.
Okay, yeah, just give me 1 second to do that.
All right, good evening. This is the Services Committee meeting for September the 1st. Call to order. I can go ahead and do a roll call. We've got myself, Joe St. John here, Mr. Capel, Mr. Fisher.
Well,
Looks
he's
like he
just coming back in.
Okay. Got Mr. Fisher.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button.
No problem. All right, we've got 3 members in attendance. We're to the visitors section. Mr. Piles or Mr. Rothermel, will you be participating as visitors?
No.
All right. We'll breeze on by. We're halfway through the agenda. All right, we've got bullet point number 4 here, minutes and approval. The minutes from our July 15th meeting. Do I have a motion or any comments? I'll make that motion.
Comment. Motion to approve.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Fisher and a second by Mr. St. John. Discussion? Roll call?
Fisher,
Yes.
St. John,
Yes.
Capel.
Yes.
All right, 3 yeas. Motion passes. Let's go on to open issues. We're discussing the tree replacement program in Sunbury Mills. This is a discussion that has been had over the past 2 meetings, and it looks like we've got some internal and external cost complexities to consider. And I'll hand it over to Mr. Rothermel, who has some items to cover.
Yes, thank you. Hopefully Steve or yourself is going to pop my visuals on the screen. The trees at Sunbury Mills has been an ongoing discussion for probably 3 of the 5 years I've been here, and I'm really pleased that tonight we have, I think, the beginning of a good solution. Aaron Noblet back in 2017 was a member of the Tree Commission and Lands and Trees Commission, which is now kind of been absorbed by those duties have been absorbed by Parks and Rec. But he is a certified arborist and has his own firm currently. He responded to some complaints we were getting in the neighborhood of Sunbury Mills and identified the problem as, I think, black knot tree fungus that particularly affects Canadian sand cherries, which is what the 4 streets I've got listed show that to be. And it also comes with what he calls cheap contractor trees. So even though there is a rinse, a soak that can be treat those trees, they were even at that time so far gone that he didn't see that there was much value in treating them and spending the money there. He suggested that we make arrangements to cut them down and replace them. So indeed, that's it's come around. We've made a couple of attempts at trying to purchase a wood chipper in sufficient size to be able to handle those size of trees, our street trees, and we've also tried to get some a stump grinder as well. But to date, we've not done that. And currently, we've lost Andrew Drunsfield, who was our certified tree person, and he is now no longer an employee, and we don't have an arborist on staff. But that's something that we try to put in our postings as we seek new positions. So Brad, having said that, Brad Gerwig was charged with trying to find the best way to remove the 38 trees in question along, I'll get them right here in a second, Stone Mill Drive and Stone Mill Court. And those two streets will lead into, or at least the drive will lead into the Price Farms development. And then you got Millstream Street and Mill Run Drive that border to the Sunbury Meadows development. So they're on the outer edges, if you will, of Sunbury Mills. So Brad went ahead and solicited some quotes from two companies. Only one responded. All the other tree companies were so busy that it was going to take them 4 to 6 weeks to quote and another 4 to 8 weeks to respond. We got the name of Sunbury Tree Care from a local contact, and had good things to say about them. So we gave them a ring, and sure enough, they've given us a quote that absolutely garners our attention. I think for $150 a tree, they will cut the tree down at the base. They'll chip it and remove it off site. They'll grind the stumps and kind of cursory cleanup of the site, meaning that Brad's people will have to go back probably in the spring or maybe later this fall and plant some seed, or do final reparations. And again, that may be determined by what we're going to do with that site, if we're going to replace the trees and when we're going to replace them and those kinds of things. But for all intents and purposes, they were going to be able to do all that work in 3 days. They had all their own equipment, and they were fully insured, both from a workers' comp standpoint and from a liability standpoint. So when you kind of put pen to paper as to what we could do it for, it was going to take us every bit of 3 people and one of our trucks and all our saws and those kinds of things. We were going to have to rent at a weekly rate of basically total $1,400 and $1,000. So we'd have $2,400 into the in addition. The labor would theoretically be no additional cost, but it's opportunity costs. So those things that are not getting done as a result of doing it. And Brad suggested it was going to take probably 3 weeks instead of 3 days to get the work done. So when you add all those up and kind of think it through a little bit, $5,700 for the 38 trees is under the mayor's limit. And we really didn't see, and even better, they could get it as soon as next week, if possibly. So I really don't see a downside to doing it. It buys us a little bit of time now to maybe next meeting this time when we meet. We'll be looking at what trees are we going to replace them with, and where, and what varietals, and perhaps do some background work so that we can have Dave Parkinson here to give us, or perhaps even invite Aaron Noblet. He's done a great job, even though we're getting at it a little bit later than probably he would have liked. But he certainly, I'm sure, would be happy to give us some samples of trees that he would like to see out there, and perhaps cluster them and not run into the situation where one variety of tree goes and 4 streets go with it. So that's really all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, but like I said, if you give me the go ahead, I would have no problem recommending that Tommy approve this. And probably just to let everybody know, we could mention it tomorrow at the council meeting and get a nod of heads from the rest of council. But I know really all 3 of you live in that general neighborhood. So I think you guys are certainly well reasoned and would have a look forward to your comments.
I think this makes a lot of sense, and I think this is a direction that we should go. For me, my big question is, do we require trees to replace it, and who has the responsibility for those trees going forward? I think that was the bigger question for me.
Well, the trees are diseased, so I would recommend that they be taken down regardless. I do think it's a decision that needs to be thought. There's probably two schools of thought on this. You know, if you look at Sunbury Mills was arguably one of the last subdivisions which required or which has street trees. Sunbury Meadows and subsequent developments on the west side, including even Sunbury Golf Course coming up, and the plans that show what's to be built on the Price Farms do not have street trees, but they have, as you know, in Sunbury Meadows, they have trees on the yard side in proximity to the sidewalk, and it gives a tree-lined effect, although not identical to what you'd have in Sunbury Estates and some of those other developments pre-Sunbury Meadows. So I guess I mentioned the fact that all four of those streets are kind of right on the edge as to where new developments are going to, or either new developments have gone or are going to go, so that if these trees were not replaced on the tree lawn, then it wouldn't, I don't think, stick out terribly, because it would be right on the edge of where there's already no street trees in the tree lawn. On the flip side, I do think putting trees back in the yard in proximity to the sidewalk, like we would have on a new development post Sunbury Mills, makes some sense. I think you probably have to ask every homeowner if they're interested in doing that. I think some would, I would assume most would be, but you know, we might maybe want to engage in some kind of a poll as to maybe even asking people if they want their tree removed. But like I said, they're diseased, and I don't know that I want to ask people that, but I would give them a say into where, if it's replaced, where it goes, and what varietal they would like.
I was thinking about that. I mean, should we send out a notice, you know, to everyone in the neighborhood saying, hey, we're planning on cutting down your tree, you know, sometime in the next month. I don't know if jumping on it and getting it done next week is the best move. I mean, we definitely want to move on it this fall, but I think maybe, I don't know, should we send out a notice and say, hey, your tree's coming down?
Well, just to
What's
be
your
clear,
opinion?
just to be clear, technically speaking, street trees in the tree lawn are our trees and not the homeowner's trees. So
Yeah.
they really aren't their trees. So we could, and I'm not trying to be heavy-handed, but we could literally say, we are removing the diseased street trees in your tree lawn. And we're going to, and now perhaps we give them 2 weeks notice or whatever you think is appropriate. We don't have to do it next week for sure. But I think letting them know that we're taking affirmative action and being assertive in removing those trees, and then giving them some thought, receiving some input from them as to what they'd like to do going forward.
That's what I think. Yeah. I mean, my opinion is no question about it. The trees are coming down. So like, do we send them a notice and just, I mean, maybe just being nice, say, hey, just FYI, your trees are coming down in the next couple of weeks.
I think that's totally appropriate.
You know, and then maybe give them an option and say, hey, given, you know, would you like us to here's your options. Would you like us to replant like this tree, or this tree? You got 3 options, or no tree. And maybe, you know, see what kind of responses we get back. I don't know. Do you guys think we should do that, or
I think they're probably that process is probably broken up into two pieces. So one, I agree with what everybody's saying here. The trees are going to come down. Martin, I'm glad you brought it up. I think one of the questions I had was about notifying the residents, despite them knowing or not knowing that it's their tree. It's always been there, and that has to do with another point I'm going to hit on in a minute. But we've got to give them at least a week, 2-week notice, just written flyer dropped in their mailbox or however we want to communicate that. I mean, Facebook isn't going to be adequate in this. This has to be more, dropped off at the homeowner's address, piece of paper, notifying, them. So when they see a crew ripping out their tree, a lot of homeowners aren't going to know that it's not their tree, truthfully. And so I think just a very brief, line about how, this is outside of the sidewalk. In other words, in the right of way, village responsibility. We're taking, affirmative action to, remove the blighted tree and are evaluating options in spring of 2021 for replacement. And I wouldn't be much more specific than that because there's still decisions to be made. But just as a toll gate now, can we all agree as a committee that we're agreeing that we would go forward with the outsourced firm, the $5,700, have Alan make the recommendation to remove pending the notification to the residents?
I agree. I think that makes sense. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, let's not tie up our street department and mess with it. I mean, the cost seems reasonable to me. So I say let's move forward with that and get it done.
It gets Brad's thumbs up too. I might not have mentioned that. The other thing too, it's implicit that I was referring to the removal of all the diseased Canadian sand cherries. There are a couple of there's one red leaf tree towards the end of your street, Joe, that looks like it's been a replacement tree. It does not look like there's anything in the world wrong with that. I guess I would contemplate keeping that one. And I know you got two, I think, London plane trees, or I would think we'd want to keep those as well.
Yeah,
I was not suggesting that we remove trees that weren't diseased or the ones that the Canadian sand cherry.
Right. I agree with that. And then one last point of just clarification. In the documentation, it shows Stone Mill Court and what's the other one? Stone Mill Drive. I just for clarification only, it's Millstone Drive and Millstone Court.
Oh, all right.
Just for the record.
Yes. Thanks. Sorry about that.
No problem. Honestly, no problem at all. The next piece on the replacement, I wanted to just share. I think Alan hit on a good point. This was one of the last neighborhoods prior to the ordinance change that had street trees permitted in the tree lawn. The neighborhood to the north of General Rosecrans, which still has healthy trees, it's considered what is it called? What's our HOA called, Martin?
Is it Sunbury Mills?
Sunbury Mills, yeah. There's a Sunbury Mills Section 6. It's the Olympus Homes to the north. That neighborhood was built after our section of Sunbury Mills, and they also have street trees, except for the different varieties. I guess there's 2 points I want to hit on this. One, the street trees, if we look to move those street trees into the existing residence yard, there's really, I hit on this on our last meeting, there's really no real estate to do so. If you drive through the neighborhood, there's these flowering pear trees that virtually cover the entire front yard of every home. There's just really nowhere to put another tree, in my opinion. And the second thing is, back to my original point, that I don't think people are going to delineate between, whether it's their tree or the village's tree. I think the people will be happy that we're removing at no cost to the resident, a diseased tree. But as part of the development package that came through, there was a yard tree and a street tree virtually for every single house. And then if there's no real estate to put that additional tree, what we're going to end up doing is we're going to just end up taking out all these trees in the entire neighborhood. And it's more than just 38 trees right now. Those are the ones that are diseased now. Those cherry trees that line the other portion of the neighborhood, you know, those are going to need to come out at some point as well. I mean, they're just not great trees. And we're talking about losing, you know, upwards of 100 trees in one of the core, you know, neighborhoods adjacent to an elementary school. And, you know, I guess what I'm trying to say is if you incorporate the tree plan to not be in the tree lawn from the get-go, I totally get that. But in terms of being grandfathered in or just fitting within the development in general, I think the trees need to be in the tree lawn, and the variety and spacing and things like that. I think we can seek some expert opinion, like from Parkinson's firm, to see, you know, from a landscape architecture standpoint, you know, what they would recommend from a diversity and species and spacing and just overall appeal standpoint. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I
But
would agree with that. I mean, you don't, there's definitely no real estate in between, you know, in the residence yards. There's not. From the house to the sidewalk, you're right about the pear trees. I mean, there's no room. If we're gonna replace them, which I think we should personally, I think most of our neighbors agree. As long as it's, you know, there's a variation so that we don't have the same thing happen again, where all the trees get the same disease and they all die. But I think it needs to be, you know, in the tree lawn between the sidewalk and the street. So, and maybe we can, you know, send in our flyers, you know, that we send out, maybe we ask for some community input, you know, but I agree. I think we need to replace them.
Okay. All right. Any other comment on that particular item? And I think the replacement discussion, I think, will take place probably over the next 3 months. But
Yeah.
if does anybody else have any directional comments on the replacement portion?
I will make sure I get a copy of the letter or flyer that we're going to use and send it to each of you, and at least have you guys take a look at it and refine it, and then probably have June do a final version, particularly if it's more like a flyer or a pamphlet. She's really good at graphics and those kinds of things. And then I'll work on what I would also ask you to kind of pay attention to the dates. You know, maybe we give them 2 weeks, or say work will commence in maybe October or something. Again, we'll have to coordinate that with the availability of the vendor, particularly in the fall, but I don't see that as a problem, but I'll certainly keep you apprised of that. But I'm thinking probably at least 2 weeks, if not more, is probably what I would want if I were a homeowner.
Okay. And do you think it's realistic that June can get a letter drafted and we can get that approved by next week?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to hope it's done this week, because I believe she's going to be on vacation next week. So yeah, we'll get it this week.
Okay.
I'll check with her. I mean, it only takes one, and if we have to have Brad's guys or me or whoever deliver them door to door, that's not a problem.
I'm happy to help with that as well.
Oh, okay, great.
And so we'll have a letter wrapped up by the end of the week and potentially delivered by early next week, so we could be removing trees by the week of the 21st of September.
Yep.
Given a 2-week window,
Okay.
as long as everything works out with the vendor.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you guys know better than I do living over there. I don't think we're going to get much pushback on that, do you? I've not heard anyone be complimentary to those trees, so.
No,
I
I
don't
don't.
think there's going to be any pushback at all, but I still think it's good to give everyone a heads up. Hey, you know, send them a letter and,
Right.
you know, say, hey, be expecting a crew to be hacking down your trees here soon.
Yep.
You know.
And we'll need to make sure it's not done on a Wednesday when there's garbage pickup and those kinds of things. We'll have to be cognizant of that stuff.
Good
Yep.
point. Good deal. All right. I think we've got direction on both of those items. And Alan, you said you're going to work with Tommy to approve the expenditure.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good deal. Thank you. All right, any other items for discussion?
I don't have any.
Mr. Capel,
I don't have anything else.
right? Mr. Rothermel, anything additional?
I'll just mention very briefly because Dave Parkinson may well mention this tomorrow, and that is with respect to the wastewater treatment plant. Tommy Hatfield had brought to our attention the fact that the EPA had alerted all municipalities that they had a loan program up to, well, really no limit, but subject to their approval, of course, is that if there was any things that needed to be done at the plant, and there was a whole kind of listing of things that qualified, some got more points than others or not. Dave Parkinson said that he would be more than happy to fill something out for us. So between Dale Wampler and Dave Parkinson and Kathy Belcher and I, we ran a lot of things up the flagpole. And we also know that we've got the Little Walnut sewer that we're gonna be paying for through through a bond, and we'll be paying off debt on that as well. So there was there's a lot of discussion on how much and we would want to spend, what Kathy would be comfortable with, and let alone what is it that we would ask the work to be done on. So the couple of issues that came up, one was capacity, and if we are truly going to increase the capacity of the plant, our plant's currently rated at a 1.125 million gallons a day, but the size of the plant or the footprint of the plant is large enough that there could be improvements in the existing footprint to get us to 1.5 million, but you would need some additional improvements. So we thought that might be a thing to get, because again, they're suggesting we have 1.5% interest, and you're not going to get money much lower than that. And granted, it's not a grant, you have to pay it back, but that's a very favorable rate to get paid back. But it also came to our attention that if indeed we were going to do something that's going to increase the capacity of the plant, there's still a lot of things that need to be done with respect to assessing our plant, a facilities master plan, if you will, facilities maintenance plan would need to be done. And that's probably closer to the tune of $150,000. So we thought rather than do a whole lot for hard improvements, it would make sense at a minimum to get that 150,000 and get that facilities maintenance plan done. That keeps all our options open. And then there are other items that need to be done, like generators placed at all of our pump stations. Also increasing the size of our drying beds, and then putting more canopies over the top so that they're covered from the elements. Those are two items that Dale Wampler is really wanting to get done. Ironically, with the kind of money that Kathy can budget and put in certain spots for us, we always do somewhere around $300,000 worth of work annually anyway in repairs and unforeseen things. So we wouldn't necessarily have to get a $1.5 million loan to do that work. If we did it all at once, we would. But if we just made our kind of a makeshift master plan in our head, saying, you know what, in the next 3 years we're going to do generators and divide up the drying bed space in thirds, we probably could get that done without that. So Dave's going to submit $1.5 million worth of loans for that what I'll call minor work, and in addition to the 150,000. And then it's not binding in any way. We don't know that we're going to qualify for it, but if we do qualify for it, we'll come back to council and then make a recommendation on how we proceed. So I just want to let you know that's in the offing, and there are a number of, excuse me, development things going on now. So, you know, we need to pay attention to the plan. It's getting a little age to it now, and it's creeping up to the probably 80% capacity point. So we want to stay on that, particularly with the availability of low interest loans.
Okay, the master plan that you referenced, 150,000, that can't be paid for out of this loan, correct?
Actually, if I understand it, I'm probably better for Kathy or Dave, but it can be, they can front the money, and then when that master plan, the results of it would parlay into a project, and then that project could include those monies. So technically speaking, you can roll it over to when you finance whatever project you're going to do.
Okay. All right. I think everything that you just discussed, can you put that into writing, at least the options that you discussed? That, like the generators, you know, that stands out right away, you know, for us to absolutely get up and running at all our pump stations, you know, increasing the coverage, covered areas.
Just to be clear too, I may not have, we don't have any generators at the plants or at those stations. So that would be the absolute best. We do have generators that we can take to them. So it's not like we're completely out of operations, but it certainly would be a boon to a 3-person staff to be able to have generators that kick on automatically rather than having to go out and deploy them and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. If
Yeah,
you
no,
or
I'll write
Dale
that
can
up.
document that, that'd be great.
Sure.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
That's all I got.
And the last thing on that note, I'm just going to use layman's terms. You know, we've got leaking pipes just naturally over time underground that allows stormwater in rain into the plant, which, you know, gets us to that 80% capacity. In some cases, a lot of it's fresh water running in. What kind of plans do we have to address the I&I component of our sewer system, not just the plant?
Well, we believe, we hope, we addressed one major I&I source here recently over on Prairie Run. It's not been determined. I've not heard from Dale. It's only been a couple of weeks since it's been fully done. So he tells me a month or two, we'll see. And then obviously weather's going to be a component of that too. But we're hopeful that at least made a dent in that. Since I've been here 5 years, we had FECOR come out and do a complete cammering of the Cheshire Road pipe behind the homes there at the creek on the west side of Cheshire Road. And there was some I&I coming in from there, but none of what they called the gushers. And therefore, the $340,000 project that we thought would to line that pipe and prevent some of that I&I, it was decided not to do that because the level of I&I at that particular spot wasn't what they had thought it was. There's significant I&I coming into the plant, and we've yet to identify all of the areas. I think that's another great project that we can continue to do with the monies we have from year to year that Kathy has for us to pick sections of our system and camera them and identify places that could be slip sealed. So that's a good point.
Okay. Any other comments for Alan, Mr. Fisher, Mr. Capel? All right.
Nope.
All right. I would have considered that new business. I don't know if I actually titled it that. Is there any new business?
I have none.
All right, good deal. I'll make a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Second.
All right, roll call, St. John, yes. Mr. Fisher,
Yes.
Mr. Capel,
Yes.
three
Three
yeas.
ayes. Thank you.
Adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank you for Mr. Piles. Thank you, Mr. Rothermel. Have a good evening.
Thanks,
Good
guys.
night, everyone.
Yeah, see you tomorrow.